I've written down here, we hope we can unleash your potential and ignite innovation in the delivery of operational excellence. Do you like that? It's a conference statement.
Exactly. Message.
I like to be thematic there. So we're going to look at condition resilience and decarbonisation, and a bit of a new approach to this because there's been some funding changes this year and there's no clear funding pathway now for actual capital work. So we're going to start from me talking for about 10-12 minutes on some of the research that we've done recently. We did a survey of school estate practitioners nationally. I'm going to pass on to Nigel, who's the decarbonisation expert. So I'm going to cover condition policy. Nigel's going to pick up actual decarbonisation and some strategies for how you can achieve that. As I said, the key drivers for this is all about how schools and academies and much of the wider public sector can now fund and deliver decarbonisation projects. So we had the withdrawal from the Low Carbon Skills Fund and the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme. We've got the emergence of new models such as those through Great British Energy, the combined authority programmes, and a potential shift, and this is quite key, towards a maintenance-led approach to future programmes. I want people to keep that word in their head, maintenance, because as we're going through the first half of this, you'll see there's a theme emerging in terms of maintenance of what we've got. These new schemes, Great British Energy, located, the Net Zero Accelerator Programme, they are there is still some money in place, but they're arguably much narrower in focus, they have a lot less funding available, so geographically.
So they're much harder for schools to get into, aren't they? Though?
Absolutely. So there's only 3 regions with the NZAP programme, the combined authority programme. Nigel will have the exact figures, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they are much smaller.
600 schools.
Yeah.
600 schools in the latest programme. Well, actually it started out at 600 schools and it's been thinned down beyond that, out of 24,000. So you're more likely to not be in it than you are
It's
to be
a bit
in
like
it.
SIF, isn't it, really, at the end of the day?
Well, I think it's worse than that, actually.
Yeah, it's worse. We send the bags under my eyes, by the way. I feel sorry for all we play. I've got a weekend that's doing this. So there's that aspect of it, and then there's obviously we had the budget on Wednesday. I had a big square bracket here with highlighted in yellow, need to mention the budget, and all we heard about there was some reduction in energy bills. Nigel and I were talking about it yesterday, that's a bit unclear, and 18 million quid for playgrounds and 5 million quid for libraries, whichever way around that was, which was a bit odd. There was very little mention of anything new on net, well, exactly, but net or net zero. The only thing I will say, the spending review last year, they have committed to maintenance funding, so again, going back to that point about maintenance funding, that was quite clear in the spending review, that's going to increase. So it is there, it's just a different way of managing it. So I'm John Jones, I'm a director at MAC. I lead our education sector business nationally. Been at MAC nearly 10 years now. I was an estate director for a multi-academy trust not too far from here. That's a long time ago now. We're a professional building surveying practice, 7 offices, national remit, and 125 staff at the last camp. That's gone up from 90 this time last year. So it's a busy business. We don't just work in education, we do lots of other stuff, which means we can try to transition things and ideas across. Colleagues of mine, particularly our Milton Keynes office, do a lot with retailers such as Morrison's, Holland and Barrett, Primark, people like that. And believe it or not, those organisations are very, very well invested in net zero. They spend huge amounts of money on changing fridges and rooftop plants and all sorts to save money. And speaking to them, you would not believe how complicated fridges in a supermarket are. So we've got that knowledge that we can bring across as well. Nigel, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, hi, I'm Nigel Alwyn-Foster. I'm the Business Development Director at ReEnergise Limited. I've been in it for 10 years. I'm actually ex-army for my sins, so I don't want any trouble. And we're effectively now MAC's decarbonisation arm. There's now 15 on the payroll, much smaller company. Our mission is to, we work purely in the education sector, schools and colleges. And our mission is to enable schools and multi-academy trusts to save money and carbon in that order, in brackets, because we recognise now that it's all about the money. And with the demise of all these government grants in the summer of this year, there's not a lot of money to do much, and therefore it's got to be about the money before the carbon. But I'll talk more about that later on.
The other thing to say is, and Nigel picked this up, is for my business, we are really passionate about schools. All my people are really passionate about schools, but we stop where we don't know what we do. We don't try and wing our way through things that we're not experts in. We're not experts in decarb, we're humble surveyors. That's why we partner with ReEnergise. They're the experts in that, and we work together on those aspects where we need to. So 3 key aims really to support you in understanding this kind of new approach to net zero and decarbonisation, driven by building condition, saving money and reducing carbon. To show you how this combined focus on condition resilience and decarbonisation will need some of these new delivery models to optimising the estate, and these new approaches do not rely solely on those grants, and then provide some practical steps, hopefully that Nigel can talk about, to understanding the estate on my side of its condition, but also delivery and optimisation of key things like heating systems, again to reduce carbon and deliver those cost savings that I know are so important to your budget. All of this, though, as we said, it's now unavoidable for all organisations working in the public sector with the withdrawal of those funding schemes. So we said LCSF, PSDS provided a means of funding, they provided that clear focus on net zero and for changes across the school estate, but now they've gone, unless you're in that net zero accelerator programme or you've got access to those other funding streams that we've talked about, you now face a bit of a choice in delivering operational excellence in decarb, and that is either you can do nothing and ignore net zero until either some new funding comes about or you find another way, fund it yourself, and that's obviously not really an option, or you find a route that doesn't rely on the grant funding but strikes a sensible balance between business as usual and making some progress towards net zero. And as Nigel said, saving money and carbon are not incompatible. So we're going to go on to show how can we save money, carbon and improve building condition. And I'm just going to first look at the policy direction for some of this.
So how do people get into that net zero accelerator?
So the net zero accelerator is 50 schools in three regions: North West, North East, West Midlands.
You can't get into it.
Can't apply for it.
It's a done deal on the phase so far. So you've got to wait for whatever is coming next, and we don't yet know. I'm hoping to find out soon what's coming next. But it wasn't very democratic, put it that way.
So that whatever condition survey data they've got, they went on that probably.
They had a selection. They've had a selection.
And it was regional.
I'm not embarrassed to say we tended for it, didn't get it. Long story. But so we had some insights to tender documents, didn't we, Nigel? But then we're going to go through a selection process for schools in each region. But we obviously don't know what they've actually done. You were asked to present ideas in that tender of how you'd select, and we presented our ideas, or the successful providers might have presented.
The main reason for selecting schools in that programme was they looked at the people doing the consortium doing it. They looked in conjunction with the DFE and the Net Zero Accelerator organisers. They looked at which school estates lend themselves best to things like solar PV, so that they can install wide-scale on-site generation and storage quickly. It costs what it costs, and therefore recoup the cost quickly, so that they can show reduction in energy usage. That's basically the main driver. It's a solar programme, for want of a better word.
Yeah, it is.
Is that all it was? Really?
No, it's a lot. There is more to it than that, but the selection was about solar sites.
Yeah, I've got a few schools who are SCA trusts in various parts of the country who rung me up and said, is this a con? Because someone's rung me up saying they'll get free solar panels. And in some cases, we've said to the school, we've got work starting on site next year, and they factoring this in because of CDM and health and safety and all that stuff. That is a whole presentation in itself. So, yeah, anyway.
Well, and then the DV doesn't like if somebody else is on site doing something else and they're on site.
I don't want them on site either. All my people are on site, so it's a two-way thing really, because it causes huge complexities in terms of construction design management. But anyway. So when this came out last year, this was introduced by the DFE Education Estates 2024. Their 3 pillars approach to the estates, education estate service offer moving forward. Now, since the day they announced this, I've been talking about condition resilience and decarbonisation. Because I realised at the time that, we've talked about CIF, we've talked about SCA, both of those programmes over quite a long period of time have kind of had decarbonisation, net zero around the periphery. So 2 or 3 years ago they brought in this requirement for sustainable solutions in CIF. SCA trusts have become a bit more invested in decarbonisation, but the two things have never been brought together. So when this pillar came out, this middle one, last year, I thought, hang on, they're going to start bringing this stuff together, and this seems to be the direction of travel. Just to pick up the other two, estate management is going to be your gems, good estate management for schools, and kind of that low condition preventative stuff. And at the other end of the scale, build and rebuild is going to be your school rebuilding programme, the RAC rebuilding programme, the bigger interventions. But the key one to focus today is this one in the middle. And that's what I've been talking about quite a lot over the past 12 months.
Do you think that SIF is aligned with that?
Presently, no, frankly. So the problem with the SIF approach, and I can talk openly here, I'm doing about 50 heating bids. The majority of those will go gas to gas.
Really?
Yeah, the schools don't want it. Because the problem with SIF is it doesn't allow you to bolt on what you need to keep the operational costs down.
That's correct.
So I've talked about this a lot for years. We must have done 500,000 square metres of roofing over the past 10 years on SIF. Not put solar panels on a single one of them. Because the funding is not clear. That if you put a bid into SIF to say we want to replace your roofs, but actually we need another 200 grand to put solar panels in, that's where we go.
I'd kind of heard a bit that they were saying that if you don't put in heat pumps to replace gas, they're not going to look at it.
I got 50 projects last year, gas to gas.
Yeah.
No,
this year.
Still reduce your carbon emissions because you're more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You might have heard that by reading the guidances, so I take the guidance each year when it comes out, put the two on, last year's and this year's next to each other, go through the highlight bit, then we get this change.
Do you think that's going to change next year?
Well, that's where I think this middle pillar's coming about, and as a growth
Sorry,
talk about.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine. No, I'll have a discussion about it, so it makes it easier for
Well, it
me.
makes perfect sense, doesn't it? If you've got capital and you're trying, it's two birds with one stone in a way, but there isn't enough money. And if you try and do one thing with one arm and you've pulled the funding on that, then you want to make sure the other arm's still close to that.
Well, it makes sense to rationalise it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it does not make sense to be replacing the roof but not looking at solar at the same time. And it would be better to do fewer schools and do them properly than mess about doing only half a job on two
We
schools.
had a brand new school built 2 years ago. We said, what about solar on the roof? And no, it's not going to happen.
But if you're replacing a roof that can't do the solar, at least specify your roof to be strong enough to
Take the
retrofit in
solar.
the future.
So and that's what we're doing with heating schemes under SIF. Even if we're going gas to gas, we're making sure the pipe work is going in at the right size to take future heat pumps. So we are future proofing them. But it's just the funding is that schools don't like it, it's operational costs, it's a lot more expensive, reduces the chance of getting your SIF bid, but you've got to do it all. We are doing it all, or have to, got no choice. So that's kind of where we are with that. So during the past year we carried out what we believe is the first school estate practitioner survey for estate professionals. Some of you may have completed that at various conferences and so on during last spring and summer. We're not going to go through the whole survey results today, just the ones that are relevant to this, and the whole thing will be available online shortly. We launched it at Education Estates a few weeks ago and presented it at the School Academy show as well last week. But in terms of headlines, the survey results give us some evidence for how we can link together the decarbonisation of the school estate with building condition need. So in terms of all of this, to be able to decarbonise, you need to have a proper understanding of the estate. So we found that only 14% of survey respondents believed that the CDC accurately reflected the condition of their buildings. 1/3 believed it was not an accurate reflection. And then interestingly, on condition surveys, 79% of our respondents seem to indicate that they had a condition survey. We think there's some confusion there with the CDC, and we think that's high, particularly when you take into account the findings of the Capital Advisors Programme.
And how much it costs to have a survey done, a proper one.
By the way, as well, these numbers are pretty robust. Statistically significant and so on. We did some work on that, so there is some.
So what's your feel on have you had a building survey carried out?
We think people got confused with the CDC. I don't
Yeah.
think.
So what number would you use as your percent-ish, half probably?
Yeah.
Does that feel right?
I think it's less than half.
But as we'll see, the key message is to deliver this approach to net zero and optimisation, you need to have that understanding of building condition. Then on decarbonisation, only 1/3 of our respondents had a heat decarbonisation plan, less than half had a climate action plan. There was an expectation that you'd have a climate action plan by September, and I do acknowledge this survey was done last summer, so hopefully that that number's moved upwards.
But the challenge is, it's all right having a plan, but if you haven't got the means to implement it, that's the real challenge.
Yeah, and our survey also found that bigger organisations are more likely to have HDPs, and probably because they were better able to access that low carbon skills fund. And that's notwithstanding the fact that some SCA trusts, for example, might have funded their own HDPs. I know Nigel's got plenty of clients and schools that did so. We also asked our survey respondents to rate the condition of a select list of building elements, broadly based on the CDC. The one I want to point out here is the heating. So 50% of our respondents thought that heating required improvement. So back to your questions around gas boilers and the SIF programme, half of schools in our survey have got problems with heating. There's other elements there that are relevant, and there's some really interesting stuff with toilets, believe it or not.
Fortunately, but I was just going to pick that one up.
There is some
I
really
can tell you
interesting
from
stuff with
experience.
toilets, because that's a whole other presentation in itself. Don't start me on toilets. Toilets drive me mad. You can't get any money for them, and they're in a really poor condition, and we all know the links with education, but that's for another day.
Fire doors is interesting, isn't it?
But that heating's a key issue there. Roofing, external walls, windows, they offer us some benefits in terms of energy efficiency, clear condition need, but the heating is the one there. And then 2/3 of our respondents believe they have at least one block that will reach end of life in the next 5 years. Now, the National Audit Office said a few years ago that there's 3,600 system built blocks, which the DFE has concerns about, 38% of buildings beyond their initial design life. But more on this in the next slide, something's changed on that. And then there's a lot of stuff there in the open-ended questions about planned preventative maintenance. So a lot of our responses pointed towards planned preventative maintenance, and I'll come on to that then. Last bit from me now, future estate strategy. So a few weeks ago, last week of October, the capital team, DFE, took questions from Education Select Committee members. Some of you might have read about it in Schools Week. So linked to all of our survey findings, the department's going to publish this estate strategy aimed to address maintenance backlog issues, but they also suggested that there's a need for planned preventative maintenance of the school estate, directly back to our findings. They commissioned some research last year into older buildings, and now they're saying that they don't think there are any systematic issues from system built blocks. You can read this in Schools Week, and they previously had that as a key risk. But they do think that there's a deterioration of those buildings due to lack of maintenance. Key word coming here is maintenance.
Yeah.
And the final bit, reinforcing all the above, they said the DFE intends to practically maintain, and that's a quote, practically maintain school buildings with no plans for a comprehensive rebuilding programme. So they're never going to rebuild all schools. So when we connect all this together with our survey, this new approach to condition resilience and decarb as a single pillar, it does show that we need to take a different approach to net zero to deliver condition improvement, estate optimisation, and deliver those cost savings through planned maintenance, and then that will hopefully reduce your carbon as well. I'm going to pass knowledge on to Nigel after some.
I'm going to stand over there, so I'll point at some diagrams.
Okay.
Right, we had a...
I'll have to Nigel.
I'm looking for the thing that changes.
Oh, I've got it. I was going to do it from again.
That's all right, I can probably do it from here. I just need to check that it works okay. Has everyone seen carbon footprints before? So everyone understands zone scopes 1, 2 and 3, or scope 1, 2 and 3 mystery? So scope 1 emissions, scope 2 emissions, scope 3 emissions?
Give us a quickie.
Okay. Scope 1 emissions are emissions which arise from the school, burning fossil fuels on site. So those are emissions which you directly control. Scope 2 emissions arise from another organisation off-site, e.g. the grid, a grid power station, burning fossil fuels to generate energy which you use on site, so you're indirectly responsible for it because you buy that energy. Scope 3 emissions is everything else, and it's in the everything else where the problem lies. So Scope 1 emissions you can sort out yourselves, and that would be the subject of a heat decarbonisation plan, for example, getting rid of your fossil fuel heating plant. And if you've got school vehicles, which are currently going to be petrol or diesel, converting them to electric vehicles, so you are responsible, but of course you can't do it if you haven't got the money to do it. Scope 2 emissions, fundamentally the grid, the national grid is responsible, and therefore the government is responsible as well, and Scope 2 emissions are going to trend to zero, whether you in your school you do anything about it or not, because the grid has got a government given mandate to get to net zero by 2035. almost certainly won't, because the engineering challenge to achieve that is just too great. But that is the intent, so in the end it will happen. So if you're running a school or a college or a bunch of schools and colleges, and you're thinking that you're putting up solar PV, for example, in order to decarbonise your school estate, not really, because all the electricity that you use, whether it comes from your own estate or from the grid, is in the end going to be net zero electricity. The reason you're putting up solar PV is to reduce your operating costs to save your school money. It's quite important to understand that distinction, I think. Anyway, the point about these carbon footprints is this big red wedge, bit of a sort of strawberry jam coloured wedge really, is Scope 1 emissions arising from burning. These are two authentic carbon footprints arising from gas boilers burning on site. And the immediate deduction from that is, if you don't do something about that, you ain't never going to be net zero on your school site. So you've got to get rid of your fossil fuel heating plant sooner or later. I think we all understand that. But if you want to talk about being net zero and you're thinking of doing it while still having fossil fuels, that's not going to happen. This clotted creamy coloured wedge here, you can see where this is going, can't you?
Yes.
That is Scope 2, so that is the national grid. I used this slide in front of 500 head teachers at a conference a couple of years back, and we did a sort of, okay, who puts jam on the top and cream underneath, and who puts cream on the top and jam underneath? Me, I'm a cream and then jam on the top. I'll tell you, I lost. I almost had to walk out there and then. I couldn't believe it. And more people put cream on top than jam. Anyway, right. That is also Scope 1. So that's your transport emissions, and it's trivial. So when people talk about, right, we need to convert transport in schools, yes, you do. But actually, it's not going to make a big difference to your carbon footprint. Everything else is Scope 3. And you can see there are some big hitters there. Commuting, business travel, in other words, going to sporting events or whatever travel you need to do to run your school curriculum, extracurricular activity. So all of that is in the gift of someone else. You can't do anything about it. That is the one bit that you can do. And just kind of hold that thought. You've got to get rid of that fossil fuel heating plant. I'm going to have to rattle through that. Right, some principles. How we get to net zero. What do we do? First off, reduce the site's energy demands as much as practicable. That will reduce your operating costs, and it will reduce the capacity of low carbon replacement systems needed in due course, which will reduce the capital outlay needed for heat pumps. That's what you're going to convert to. Heat pumps are very expensive. If you want a quiet life and save money, frankly, stay on gas boilers, and I say that coming from a net zero consultancy, but it's true. When the time and funding is right, convert the generation of power, transport, heat to low carbon systems. Do this in an integrated manner. Always take the holistic perspective. See your estate as a system of systems. Really, that's our job as the engineers, but do please remember, integration and systems approach matters. Right, so how do we plan for that? Planning and to avoid later regrets. We need to measure and record the current situation to provide a baseline against which to measure progress and assess future system needs, for example, heat demands. We need to determine the optimum design concept for the converted site. In other words, once we get there, once we've got a net zero site, what is it going to look like? How's it going to be operating? And in essence, everything is going to be running on electricity. We talk about electrified school sites, and that means the heating is running off electricity. That is heat pumps, not direct electric heaters. You don't want direct electric heaters. They're not efficient compared to heat pumps. Heat pumps are the most efficient solution. So electrified heating, electrified transport, and then everything else which you're currently running off electricity, that continues to run off electricity. No more gas, no more oil. We work back from that to determine an achievable, affordable roadmap. And this is usually divided into early measures, measures which reduce the energy usage on site and therefore reduce the operating costs, and then later measures that will remove the fossil fuel elements. We call that the decarbonisation phase. And remember, systems integration. Right, this next slide puts all that together, and hopefully it's a helpful slide. You've got cost up the left-hand side, and you've got time along the horizontal axis. Here's the overall technical solution we were talking about. Here, 2050 is the UK net zero commitment under the Climate Change Act 2008. 2045 is the date that this particular school decided that they wanted to reach net zero. And this is a decarbonisation approach based on having the right amount of money at the right time, which I appreciate is difficult to achieve. So over here on the left-hand side, we have what we call the enabling phase, and that's all the energy efficiency measures, what we would now call energy optimisation, the things that reduce your operating costs. So you do that first to get the estate as energy efficient as you reasonably can. It doesn't mean doing absolutely everything, but what you can reasonably do and affordably do, and then you start the main decarbonisation phase, because that's the bit that's going to cost the money.
Can I just give you that example about pumps?
Sorry?
The pumps example would be good here. Remember that? Optimising the pumps, you told me that at school, but in first
Oh, okay, yeah, I understood. Yeah, so a snapshot of the kind of thing that you can achieve. So we go into lots and lots of school sites, we look at the plant rooms, and let's take a school which maybe has been running for about 100 years, probably was on coal way back when, and then converted to gas, and it might be on its third or fourth iteration of the gas plant. So the first gas boilers went on, I don't know, 40 years ago, something like that. We're now on to cellar boilers number 4, just gone in. And what tends to happen with the contractors is that they will replace the heating plant, but they will leave the old infrastructure in place because that's the cheapest way to do it. So we go in and we have a look and we find a nice new gas boiler, looks fantastic, and we then look around the rest of the plant room and you find not only the internal circuit within the plant room that goes with the boiler that's just been put in place, but you find the circuit that was the boiler before, and before that, and before that. So you then got the hot water that is coming out of the new boiler, which should be going straight to the internal distribution system, in other words the radiators all around the school building, is actually going through 3 additional redundant internal circuits within the plant room before it gets there. That's 3 sets of twin head electric pumps driving hot water and cold water around the circuits. That's 3 sets of wasted electricity. Take them out, or at least just disconnect them. Those sorts of things which tend to be missed when people are looking at school estates, and certainly by contractors. That's an example of what I call energy optimisation. Another one would be weather compensation. So all modern heating systems should be fitted with weather compensation, which means that whatever type of boiler it is, so not heat pumps, but combustion systems, they should be set so that whatever the weather outside is, that adjusts the operation of the boiler. So cold day, very cold day, -5, then the boiler will, there's a sensor outside sensing that, connecting into the control system for the boiler, that will affect the way that the boiler operates. Not such a cold day, I don't know, +10, but you still want the heating on, the boiler will not fire up so much. That's going to save you a lot of money. Be hard to put a figure on it, but it's a common occurrence to go into a school plant room and find that it has not been fitted with weather compensation, and it should be. So, and it's not it doesn't cost very much money to do that. I've got a table which I'll get to. I'm going to whistle through. We've done that slide really, I think, but I think that's a good way to think about how the process works. Right, when you've got the PSDS operating, what happens is it all gets squashed up to the left-hand side, because the PSDS offers you a load of money. It's a kind of once-in-a-lifetime chance. You're not going to turn the money down. You get your PSDS grant, you do your conversion, and you have to do it within the sort of 1-year time frame that the grant requires, or the 2-year time frame. So you don't do so much of the energy efficiency side of life, or you put the two together. It's good for the school that gets the grant, but it's not optimum because they haven't spent enough time doing the energy optimisation. Now that we've got no grants, it looks like this. You're going to wait a long time to get the money to do the conversion. You've got plenty of time to look at energy optimisation. I actually think from an engineering point of view, this is better, because you will spend more time in your schools looking at how are we going to get our schools using less energy before we decide to convert to heat pumps and all of the gizmos, etc. that go with heat pumps. So that might be kind of, it's disappointing for a company like mine that there aren't more programs around. Actually, from an engineering point of view, it's not a bad thing. Right. We also talk about a spectrum of measures. This is new for us in my company. So, carbon versus money. If you're hard over on the left, and kind of level 1, you only care about the money, you don't care about getting to net zero. If you're over this side, you only care about getting to net zero, you don't care about the money. In reality, nobody can be here because they can't afford it. Nobody can be here because you've got a requirement to think about net zero, so you can't do that. You're somewhere in the middle. And we find it's quite a useful way now to talk to clients, to show them this spectrum. Where do you think you are on it? And probably, actually, you're over here. Like it or not, I've got to think most about the money. But the critical thing is, I don't want to do anything on my estate that is going to jeopardise my ability to get to net zero in the long run. And you tell an engineer that will make a difference to what kind of systems you put onto the school estate. So it's important to recognise that. Right. That reiterates what I just said. Now, that I'm going to go forward to, that's the summary slide of the questions. We're doing questions going along. This chart, hopefully you get these slides as a takeaway. I just want to put this up because it shows some things not to do and some things to do. This again is authentic data based on a whole load of school surveys looking at energy efficiency and energy optimisation. And we graded everything. I've got a lot of charts like this based on average spend, payback and so on and so on. But in essence, average capital costs from kind of very low to high, and then payback, which is what everyone's interested in, and then we green amber redded it, we ragged it, and green meant it paid back in under 10 years, and amber meant not under 10 years, but it did pay back, and red meant it didn't pay back at all. Double glazing. Where's double glazing? Right down here, about the worst thing you can do. Why? Because of double glazing.
Just repeat what you said there about the green, because I'm looking
green is payback under 10 years.
So rooftop solar PV, 52 years?
No.
Is that 5.2?
9.2. That's quite a pessimistic number. You'll find a lot of solar contractors will tell you, oh, payback in 4, madam, sir. I believe it when I see it, frankly, because they tend to, I don't cut the books, that's being a bit sort of disingenuous, but it's their job to try and upsell solar. There's an art to fitting the right amount of solar on your school estate so that you minimise the amount you export to grid. That is not going to be the same as putting as much solar on site as you can. Let's say you've got lots and lots of flat roofs, typical kind of large 10-building secondary school, lots and lots of flat roofs, and you could probably put on 100, 150 kilowatts worth, so that's about 500 to 600 panels, all on those roofs, and from the installer's point of view, looks fantastic, lots and lots of solar, and so you're generating a lot here. It's going to save you a lot of money. It's not, because quite a lot of that solar energy being generated is actually going to be exported back to the grid because you can't use it when it's being generated.
But what I don't see on that chart is battery storage.
No, and it's not an absolutely comprehensive charge, but it would be, alongside rooftop solar PV. 9 times out of 10 now, right now, when we look at battery storage in conjunction with solar for schools, we end up saying don't put battery storage in, because the capital outlay for the battery storage negates the value and that's partly because the optimum time for solar generation is July and August, kind of mid-June through to sort of mid-August, and that's when the school often isn't operating, so you're not able to use the electricity. So battery storage will not. You've still got
a nighttime base load that you could offset with that.
Yes, you could
optimise the size.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, don't put too much in, but put enough in to cover your base load overnight.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but it does depend somewhat on the cost of the batteries, and they're still rather expensive.
And the cost of your tariff as well.
Yeah.
Going back to that schematic, it will come down over time, hopefully, so that's where there's a few different things going on there.
Yeah.
But again, going back to your engineering point, the further you leave it, the more the technology will evolve. We're looking at that with car batteries now. The energy density that they can now do isn't in production yet.
Yeah.
But will be within the next 5 to 10 years.
Agreed, but of course there's a problem with that approach, because if you leave everything, you could end up just doing nothing, because you could always be waiting for the next thing to come along. So sooner or later you've got to go. And right now, I would say, based on what we find on school sites and the way that schools operate, solar is a no-brainer. But you've got to put the right amount on, and you've got to do the.
What you're saying is the overage just gets exported to the grid.
Yeah, exactly, and you get
generator.
You'll get 5 pence a kilowatt. So the solar saves you money because you're not buying that kilowatt hour of grid electricity. Typically, right now, 20 to 25 pence a kilowatt I mean, it depends on your contract, but that's not an unreasonable number. Whereas when you export it back to the grid, the best you're going to get is 5 pence a kilowatt hour. And that's if you can get an export agreement. And you've got to have the right scale of solar, and then you've got to have someone who's prepared to buy it off you to get the export agreement. You don't get an automatic export tariff.
What's really important here as well is if you've got conditioning with the flat roofs, with the windows falling out or whatever, you've still got to do those things. We had a school in Birmingham that was built 15 years ago. Roof is chucking in water, typical 15-year-old building. And when we went to change the roof, all the solar's wrecked because all the solar cables and connectors and junctions and technical stuff I don't understand, they've been sitting underwater. So the solar's wrecked as well. So you've got to get things done in the right order and maintain your roofs. The number of roofs we do, people don't maintain them once they're done, despite being told a handover is substantial.
In spite of being a director in an engineering consultancy where we want to do all the glamorous work, I would put maintenance above all of this stuff. It's like running a car, isn't it?
And they go full circle.
You look at it, if you look after it, then you're going to be saving money, and then you're going to be more able to do this kind of stuff. We must be just about running out of time.
Well, you do
You've got another
with
2
the
minutes.
heat pumps.
But we're into lunch, so you're fine.
Yeah, so if you install the heat pumps though, at the same time you'll draw some more electricity as well, aren't you? So you could increase your solar on the basis of that.
Yes.
Just to run the pumps, basically.
Yeah. And if you're going to install heat pumps, make absolutely sure that, again, the proper feasibility studies have been done, that the site is optimised for heat pumps, that you've got the right people doing the design, the specification of the design, that the contractor installs as specified. There is so much that can go wrong if it's not done properly. Whereas gas boiler, dime a dozen, put in gas boiler. I mean, they're always oversized. Well, another thing, when we go and look at schools, the fossil fuel heating plant is always oversized. But it doesn't matter because it doesn't cost very much money. I mean, actually, oversized plant doesn't help your operating costs, but it's not as bad as putting in a heat pump wrong. So, again, it comes back to what we were talking about way back when. I would much rather, let's say there's 10 schools that could be done, I'd much rather do one properly than try and do sort of 5, not properly, because it'll just go wrong. Right, we've run out of time.
Can I just pick up about the heat pumps? We've very recently taken on a school that's had the benefit of some energy efficient measures. So the local authority have put in some solar, they've put in an air source heat pump, but they've done absolutely nothing with all the secondary systems. So it's a 1930s school full of cast iron radiators and pipes full of sludge.
It's not necessarily a disaster, it all depends on the circumstances. It's a myth that you can't run heat pumps in old leaky buildings.
So what's the best way of optimising that heat pump given that we've got the antiquated secondary systems?
Take my business card.
That's what I was
Seriously,
saying,
take my business card.
Yeah.
We'll send the team in to have a look and see what we can do.
It's not in Barnet, is it?
No, it's in near Leeds.
So I've got one in Barnet where the local authorities installed a lovely heat pump system, then it's converted to academy heat pump system, don't work. Nobody wants to take responsibility for it.
In the grand scheme of things, flushing and desludging your old pipes isn't that expensive.
Yeah. The local authority wouldn't do it.
Well, you may have to do it from your own revenue.
Yeah, absolutely, flushing pipes.
Yeah,
So we
not
still
that
people
expensive.
don't do it.
Are you finished?
I'm finished, yeah.
On your slides. Right, any questions, comments before we close? And then both Nigel and John are on their stands.
No, brilliant.
Really
Yeah.
Really helpful.
Quick practical stuff.
Thank you.
And the other beauty of this is a lot of the thought process is applicable in any domestic situation as well.
Right, guys, thank you.
If you want any goodies, they're up here, business cards and all that. And if you want a free chat about what to do about sorting out your energy, get in touch. If I come free, the rest of the team costs money.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, so we're just going in for a sick bid, and I'm really now worried about the heat pumps. I'm just going to double check it all.
Well, you know us anyway, don't you?
I wouldn't be worried about it, but the problem is,
No, well, that's what you're saying, to make sure it's
what I should have said about the SIF process is it's not geared up to put a heat pump in, but it's all done in such a hurry, you've got no time to do proper feasibility, DLO application, planning consent, noise enclosures, and it's risky.
Yeah.
It's very
Well,
risky.
it gives me enough to go back away to the consultants and have a chat. That's what I need. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Do you think we should... Is the SIF process going to be reviewed for 2026?
I'll answer that question next week.
Thank you, Clement.
There's a webinar next week about procurement. Thank you, Robin. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
Well, I hope there's some useful contributions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, I'll see you later. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. They've got a procurement out at the minute, which you tell it, but the notice is publicly available, but actually it's got a webinar, very interestingly.
On Tuesday,
Yeah,
you're talking about.
yeah. The webinar, they want you to sign something about
Yeah, you have to sign a
non-disclosure.
non-disclosure
What they
confidentiality.
started doing is, in the NZAP tender last year, there was basketball, which was all the selection of the schools and doing these initial interventions, BMS systems and so on, which they seem to be doing. The basket 2 and the basket 3. Now located going back into DFE.
Yes.
I think we might be logged in.
Just press the green button.
Yeah.
Just
Back-
push.
Try again.
And
Push
if you,
hard.
and if you fail
There
there,
you go.
yeah.
The basket 2 and the basket 3 was always optional.
Okay.
So I think now located going back into DFE, they're going to kill the basket 2 and basket 3,
Yeah, I think you're right.
re-procure it, because in that NZAP tender there was something called the regional technical regional delivery model. They wanted to look at a regional delivery model, combining all that stuff up.
Yes.
Now you read this procurement notice, that's what it looks like. And that's where I think this might go. But I could be completely wrong.
No, but even 12 months ago they were talking about reviewing the SIF process, but we won't be able to do it in time for this year, so we'll go, just in your mind, work on the basis of this year being, but we hope.
Well, I thought it'd be done this year.
Yeah. Okay. So, work in progress.
I want it gone through with my wife at this time.
Sure.
You want to see the money my wife spending on a credit card to keep her happy? Because I'm working every weekend. She's just asking me, can I go do this? Yeah, you go. You go.
What was great about that was some nice simple messages. You've got an initial period and you've got a future period. And do what's right in the initial period.
Yes.
As in proven
I
technology.
think some of it comes across a bit controversial, but,
No,
it's,
no, no.
but it's fact.
And people want clarity.
But it's fact. There is no money.
Yeah.
Unless someone's going to wire a money train, there is no money to do this stuff.
No. And education is a big part of the public sector, we know, but we've got NHS, we've got defence, you know, there's a number of other issues.
When John's put SLC pumps into a school on an RAF airbase, that went horribly wrong. We said, sure, the power was there, so we put the SIF bin in.
And it wasn't.
We got the SIF bin. Oh no, the power was there.
Ah.
What they hadn't told us was you have to excavate their runway to get to it.
Oh,
I do what you say about that.
brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
Invite us back.
Absolutely. Always. Because this ain't going to go away.
No.
Yeah.
No. And try and do something in the right order as well. Half the money on SIF is going to fire safety and heating. But if ISBL